this is really where it's going to be at. You're going to want to do off-camera flash. So we've got another great video here showing you an umbrella and a softbox and a reflector. So let's talk about off-camera flash, and that's really where it's at. That's where most professionals and most aspiring amateurs want to be. You want to be off-camera flash because that gives you a lot of control over the direction of light, the quality of light, and positioning the subject. You know, off-camera flash is really where it's at. So what I've got here, I've got an umbrella, got a light stand, and I've got a flash. And so let's just talk through a couple of these things here real quick so that you understand what you might need for off-camera flash photography. First thing is the light stand. I have a bunch of light stands, and what I found over the years is that taller is better. This stand is basically a 9-foot, maybe it's an 8-foot, it's an 8 or 9-foot light stand. And I find for most of my outdoor work, I want at least 8-foot tall light stand. That allows me to extend the light very, very high. Also, if I'm working with a tall subject like Bergen here, he's about 6'2", 6'3", somewhere in that range. I need that light to go up much higher than he is so that the catch light looks properly positioned. So make sure that you get a stand that's at least 8 feet tall. 9 to 10 feet is even better. The next thing I have here is called a flash bracket, a light stand flash umbrella bracket. So basically it attaches here to the top of the light stand, and then the umbrella goes right through there in the shaft. You can see how that works. I then have a plastic mount for my flash that mounts right there on top of the stand. This plastic mount comes with most of your flashes when you buy them retail, so that's not an extra purchase. And then the umbrella here, I basically have a Pro Photo. This is called a medium-size umbrella. You can see it's silver. When I'm in the studio, indoors, I like using white because white is kinder, gentler, softer. But when I'm outdoors, I need a lot of light reflected back onto the subject because a lot of times I'm fighting the sun and I'm working with really bright conditions. These little flashes, these little strobes don't have a lot of power, a lot of energy, so I need as much light reflected back onto the subject as possible. So outdoor flash, I love using the silver umbrellas. So now let's talk about positioning. Bergen's nice and tall, so I've got this flash up. I did a test shot just a minute ago, and what I found was I wasn't getting a lot of catch light in his eye because I actually had the umbrella too high. So I brought the umbrella down a little bit so I get a nice little catch light in his eye. Back to building the exposure. I'm gonna start building that exposure now. So aim the camera towards Bergen. I'm looking at my ISO, I'm at 100. I'm looking at my aperture, it's at f/5.6. I'm looking at my shutter speed, and I'm at 160th of a second. That's a pretty good starting point. I'm gonna take a picture without the flash and just see what that looks like. So turn off the flash there. All right, test shot, 1, 2, 3. Look at the results. And the background looks a little bit bright for me, just a little bit bright. So I'm going to make the background darker by increasing the shutter speed to a 2/50th of a second. And remember, I don't want to go above a 2/50th of a second because then I'd be fighting the synchronization speed, the maximum synchronization speed. So we'll take one more test shot there. 1, 2, 3. Cool, man. Good. Much darker, much better. I'm happy with that. Now it's time to add in the flash. So I'm going to turn on my flash. And let's go into the menu system. I'll show you how I have that flash set. My remote flash is on manual mode, and I'm at 1/16th power. I don't know if that's good or bad, so we'll just start there. I'm guessing we'll probably end up at about a 16th, maybe a 32nd. We'll see. All right, now we'll take the portrait. All right, Bergen, I'm gonna have you bring the shoulder in just a little bit. Cool. And look right here at the camera, and 1, 2, 3. All right, look at the result. And I'm just gonna compare the previous shot I took with no flash with this one where I took with the flash. And I'm looking at the eyes, and absolutely we've got a much better look. I'm gonna zoom in, looking at his catch lights. If we've got good catch lights, we have okay catch lights, not great. So I might want to lower the flash down a little bit more to get a little bit better flash catch lights. Just gonna drop it maybe a couple inches, about there. All right, and here we go again. All right, 1, 2, 3, good. Give me a smile this time. All right, Mom would be proud. 1, 2, 3. All right, now I zoom in, look at the eyes. Looking at the eyes for those catch lights. And I'm gonna say it's not quite enough flash power. So I'll go back to the menu and I'm gonna increase the power to 1/8. So I was at 1/16, and I'm gonna go to 1/8. So that's 1 stop more flash power. So in other words, twice as much light from the flash. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. And I'll shoot vertical. 1, 2, 3. All right, cool. In my opinion, that's a little bit better, a little bit more vibrant, a little snappier, better catch lights in the eye. And just because I can, I'm gonna take one more shot with a little more power just to see what that's gonna look like. A lot of times it's hard to tell when you're out in the field on these little screens. We'll know more when we get back to the studio. Push OK. I'm at 1/4 power now. All right, 1, 2, 3. And that was too much. So from 1/8 to 1/4 was definitely too much. So probably where I'll end up is probably like a 1/4 minus 2/3 of a stop, or 1/4 minus 1/3. And just for fun, we'll try that one more time. So we'll go 1/4 minus 2/3, or minus 0.7. And we'll take this last shot with the umbrella. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Cool, man. Yeah, I'm happy with that. It's a good look. Well, one of the things that I'm noticing, is it'd be nice to have a little bit of fill on the other side of his face. So now you can see that the umbrella and the flash is on my right. It'd be nice to have a fill on my left. So I'm gonna bring in a reflector and show you how to use a reflector with an umbrella in the field. So when you're using off-camera flash, a lot of times you have one light source, a single flash and an umbrella like I have here, but we want to mimic multiple light sources. And if you're on a budget, one of the easiest ways to mimic multiple light sources is to use a reflector. So I've brought in a reflector here. This is just like a standard, it's like a 42-inch or a 45-inch reflector. And I brought it in, you can see how tight I am. I'm nice and tight here. I've got basically this little tiny studio, and you can see I've got my subject, Bergen. He's back here. He's kind of like inside the whole setup. He's in between the lights. The key light, or the main light, is here with the umbrella, and then the fill is gonna be this reflector. The fill is almost always on the shaded side of the face. And there's a million different ways you can do this. You can have the fill light like down low with the umbrella up high. That's more of like a clamshell light. What I have here is more like a split light setup, where the light is split. It's coming from one side and then reflecting off of the other. Just to make things easy so you can understand, we're just gonna work with the split light setting right now. Close counts, you'll hear me say this a lot in my photography. You gotta get the stuff, all the diffusion, all of the light sources in close to the subject. Otherwise, you lose the size benefit of the diffusion. The softer, or the closer the diffusion is to the subject, the softer the light is. So close counts. So I think we're ready to take a shot. I'm just gonna double check my settings here real quick, just to remind everyone where we're at. I'm at f5.6. I'm at a 2/50th of a second. That's my maximum shutter sync speed. And I'm at I'm at ISO 100. I'm using remote flash. I'll go into my menu system here real quick just to double check where my flash settings are. I'm in manual mode for that remote flash, and I'm at 1/4 power and minus 2/3 from 1/4 power. So that's almost 1/8 power. And we're ready to take a test shot. So let's see how this works. You ready, Bergen?
I'm ready.
All right, cool. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Cool. And let me look at the results of that image. It's a nice looking shot. I'm gonna zoom in, check his eyes, make sure our catch lights are good to go. Nice catch lights. Yeah, real nice. Now, I've got a little space to work with. A lot of times I like my reflector to be in very, very close to the subject. So I'm actually gonna do that. I'm actually gonna move the reflector in ever so slightly closer. There we go. It feels a little bit close, doesn't it?
A little
a little bit uncomfortable, but as long as if you have the subject just kind of focus on you and pay attention to you, very quickly the studio equipment just fades away. Alrighty, here we go. Ready for the next one? Yeah. All right, 1, 2, 3. And 1, 2, 3. Let's shoot a vertical picture. I'm gonna have you bring your right arm forward. Right. Nice. 1, 2, 3. Excellent. I'm gonna zoom in real quickly and look at the quality of light in his face. It's a nice look, really nice look. I'm also checking focus, just making sure that I've nailed the focus on his eyes. Nothing worse than out of focus portraits. Let me look at my horizontal image. Real nice. All right, there you have it. Shooting with a reflector and an umbrella. So let's talk about softboxes and why they're different than umbrellas. Softboxes allow a different shape of light. You know, umbrellas are round, give a nice round catch light. Softboxes allow us to do kind of a square catch light. But another advantage of softboxes is it allows us to really control the direction of light and to prevent light from spilling off into areas we don't want them to go, or we don't want the light to go. So what I have here is what's called a speed ring, but it's specifically designed to work with your little strobes, your little Nikon and Canon strobes. So I've got the standard light stand, and then attached to the light stand, you've got the speed ring. It's called a Speedlite speed ring. And you can see the way that it works is that the softbox, the metal stays go right into the speed ring, right there. And then the flash attaches to this what's called a cold shoe. Another cool thing about this specific brand, this is a Profoto softbox, is you can rotate the softbox very quickly and very easily to get different looks. One of the reasons I love Profoto gear is because it gives us all of this flexibility and capability, and it's just very durable. On the other side of it, let me rotate it around. You can see that we basically just have a white diffusion panel. So the flash is shining into the softbox and then through the white diffusion panel. Softboxes tend to eat up a lot of energy. They suck up a lot of light, and they diffuse the light over a pretty big surface area. So just keep this in mind that when you're shooting outdoors, you may, especially on a sunny day, you may not have enough oomph or enough energy from the flash. You may have to use 2 flashes in the softbox. In this case today, I only have 1 flash. It's a cloudy day. This 1 flash is going to work just fine. All right, so how about positioning the softbox? We've got Rami here. Rami's about 6 feet tall or so, and so I want the softbox to be about 6'6" high. I like the softbox to be slightly higher than the eyes. So I'm going to bring this up about like that, and then I'm going to tip it down so it's kind of pointed towards his head. And what I do is I imagine there's kind of like a rod going through the softbox, shining to the subject. And then, Rami, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually stand in front of you just so I can make sure the positioning is good.
Sure.
Great. Just like to align it so it looks about right. Cool. I'm going to build that exposure again. So let's just double check my settings. I'm at f5.6. I'm at a 1/160th of a second. I'm at ISO 100, and that looks about right. We'll just take a quick test shot. Actually, I'm going to take 1 shot without the flash and 1 shot with the flash. All right, 1, 2, 3. Nice smile. Great. All right. His eyes are a little bit dark, so we'll add the flash in and brighten them up. I got a green light there. It means it's communicating wirelessly to the flash, and I'm just going to double check my power. I'm at manual output at 1/16 power. Okay. Here we go. Give me a nice smile. 1, 2, 3. Sweet. Look at that result. I'll look in the eyes for the catch light. Yeah, we got a nice catch light. So here's what I'm noticing though, that at 1/16 power, it's a little bit hot on his face. His face looks a little bit too bright. I'm going to decrease the power a little bit. Go into the menu, go to my group flash options, and I'm at 16th, so I need to drop it down. I'm going to drop it down by a full stop and go to 1/32 power. That cuts the amount of light by half. All right, here we go again. 1, 2, 3. Nice, that's a little bit better. Now here's one of the things that I want to talk about next. We're outdoors and the light is changing. From when we started shooting just about an hour ago, it's much brighter. I need to be thinking about that as I'm putting together these exposures. The ambient light already, I think, is too bright for this photo. So I want to increase my shutter speed, faster shutter speed, to make the ambient light darker. And that will help him stand out a little bit more from the background. So I'm gonna go from 1/160th of a second up to 1/250th of a second, and that's to drop down the ambient light brightness. Here we go again. Nice job. Okay, cool. I feel better about that. I dropped the ambient light down, the background's a little bit darker, but now I feel like I want to add in a little more flash to bring his face up a little bit more. So again, we'll do that, and we'll go into the group flash options and go back up to a 16th power. Push OK. All right, here we go. Nice job, buddy. 1, 2, 3. Oh yeah, okay, cool. That's a really nice looking image. I'm happy with that. All right, cool. So we've already shot some of the pictures with just the softbox, and now I want to bring in a reflector. And just like before, how I talked about keeping things close, I want to do the same thing in this scenario. But one more thing that we need to think about is when we're shooting with the softbox, the light is very controlled. In other words, the light doesn't really diffuse out like it does in an umbrella. So we have to be much more precise about the angles and the reflections of all of our products here, our softbox and the reflector. So I'm going to start by rotating the softbox towards Remy. There we go. Basically keep that the same as it was before. Now with the reflector, I'm going to bring that around front and make a nice tight studio. And these are all sandbagged, which is good, but it can make it a little bit harder to move around. Nice and tight. So this tightness will make the portrait look really nice, really soft. All right, everything else is the same as before. Basically, I'm at ISO 100. I'm at f5.6. I'm at a 2/50th of a second, which means my background's going to be a little bit darker, which is what I'm after. My flash setting is still at, I think, 1/16th power. Yep, I'm at 1/16th power. And we'll take our first shot. All right, Remy, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Great. Look at the results of that image. Just doing a quick chimp. Oh yeah, nice look on the face. Great. I'm gonna increase the power a little bit. He's wearing a black sweatshirt, and so I wanna maybe bring out a little bit more detail on the black sweatshirt. Let's just see what that looks like. I'll bring this up now to, let's go to an 1/8 power. Hit OK. And we'll take this next picture at 1/8 power. Right on. 1, 2, 3. Great. And I brought it up to 1/8, and I quickly realized that it was probably too much. It's a little bit too hot. As you can see in this image, there's too much reflection off of his face and off of his cheeks. So that was the wrong move. But that's the cool thing about digital. You can take a shot, take a look. You don't like it, you reduce the power or increase the power. All right, I'm gonna do one more quick change here. I'm gonna rotate the softbox to the side just to see if we can get a little bit different look to the photo. Yeah, and I'm gonna shoot right through the gap, I'm gonna decrease the power back down to a 1/16th. All righty, here we go. I think this will be our last shot here with the reflector. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, it's still a little hot even now, so I'm gonna drop it down one more stop, bring it down to a 30-second power. Okay, I promise this will be the last one. Famous last words. Cool, man. Thank you. Well, you can see that setting up these shots in the real world takes a little trial and error. And you know, I kind of, as I'm watching it back, I'm kind of feeling like, yeah, it's a, you know, try this, do that, try this, do that, look at it and change. But that's the way it really works in real life. Hopefully you can get this stuff worked out before your client is on set with you. So it's nice to be able to have someone else with you to test and practice on, so that when the client finally comes, you're ready to go and you can just start taking pictures. Once you get the basics out of the way, though, you know, you're golden. You're going to get great shots. Those are really fantastic looking shots of Ramey. Off-camera flash gives you much more control, much more ability to decide where the light's from, what the shape of light is going to be. I used 2 modifiers in this example. I used umbrellas and softboxes. And in my opinion, you don't need to spend a whole lot more money on other stuff until you need a specialty type of product. You can get 95–99% of your work done with just an umbrella and a softbox. And it produces a nice professional look, and it elevates you above others who aren't using this equipment. And it's not that complicated. I think you saw as I'm setting that up, you're like, yeah, I can do that. That's just ISO 100. That's just f5.6, and that's a 250th of a second. I know these terms. They work. And then adding in flash at a 16th power. Great photos. So a couple of ideas for flash setups, and I do just 2 real simple light setups. One is an off-axis light setup. Off-axis is literally the flash here and the camera there, so a little bit off-axis. So that's one. And then off-axis with the reflector, okay? So by adding in the reflector, you get another look to that. And then the other is what we call a clamshell, or on-axis. And to do this, I'm just going to run over here real quick to this little demo area. And let's pretend that the camera is back there. So on-axis is this. So if the camera is shooting like this, the camera is basically right next to the light stand, or right next to the post. And then we can pull in a reflector underneath here as well. So this basically get a catch light right on the top of the eye and another little fill down below. This is called clamshell lighting. And both are great looks, and depending on the person, depending on their face shape, depending on their body, depending on if they have a good side or a bad side, you may elect to do either on-axis lighting or off-axis lighting. If the subject is in shade, we need to think about the direction where the ambient light is coming from. So let's imagine this. Let's imagine you're in a city, and you've moved your subject into the shade of a building, but behind the subject, the sun is shining from, right to left, something like that. So the sun direction in the background is going this way. So where should you put the flash if the subject is in the shade? Well, generally, you want to match the direction of the background light with the flash. So if the subject is in the shade, you want the light to appear as if it's all coming from the same direction. That's different, though, if the subject is in the sun. If the subject is the sun, remember we did that before where the sun's kind of back here, then the flash is directly opposite of that. So does that kind of make sense? The subject in the shade, have the light come from the same direction as the background light. If the subject is in the sun, well, then it's opposite the sun. And the reason why we do that is because it just looks odd if the subject's in the shade, the background light's going that way, and then your flashlight's going that way. It's just something that appears weird about that. And then if it's an overcast day, well, then you get to choose. Where's the light coming from? It's all on you. All right, just a quick, as we finish up here for this segment, just to kind of go through, the photos that we saw were the raw, unprocessed photos. And I just like to show with a little bit more work in Lightroom or post-processing what those might look like. So here's just to add a little bit of contrast, a little bit of color, a little bit of vibrance actually in Lightroom. This was off-camera flash using the umbrella at 1/250th of a second, f5.6 and ISO 100. And here's the vertical composition of that. Really nice. I like the feel of that photo. And we got a smile out of him, which makes me happy. He's a good, handsome kid. More of a serious guy, though. So, and then that's what the catch light looks like with an umbrella, and then nice lighting across his face. I'm really happy with the image. And then here's just another image where I just converted it to black and white just to give a different look. And I think that one was the softbox photo. Yeah, that's the softbox. And again, ISO 100, f5.6, and a 1/250th of a second. So cool. Well, here's where we're at. We've gone through the basics. You know, right now, you know everything you need to know to do great off-camera flash photography outside, okay? Well, you know almost everything you need to know. Because there's a few things that we have to learn, like specifically around, well, what do we do if it's really bright outside? You know, what if I can't shoot at a 2/50th a second? So when we come back from break, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about neutral density filters. I'm going to talk about high-speed sync. And then in the last segment, we're going to get into some sports and action photography, kind of put it all together for what initially feels like a very complicated shoot, but you're going to see it's actually not that complicated at all. So that's the plan for this afternoon.